Welcome back to another episode of the BW View. I am very excited to have Alex Hussain here on the podcast. Alex, thanks so much for joining me today. We have some exciting questions to run through and just get an overall picture of what SCAN is up to. Alex, thanks for joining.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
So, Alex, would love for our audience to get to know you a little bit more. Would you be able to share a little bit of your background and how you landed at SCAN?
Yeah, sure thing. I went to college in Fresno, California, which for anyone who's not familiar is not what you might think of when you imagine a city in California. There's a lot of different challenges that the city has. And so I got involved with a number of community development organizations in Fresno. And in that work, just really saw the holistic impact that having a job has on someone's life. Father Greg Boyle, who leads Homeboy Industries in LA, said that nothing stops a bullet like a job when they're trying to help folks in getting out of gang life. But it just became so clear that so many people in Fresno didn't have access to quality jobs or to job training programs to help them to get there. So I helped to build a business accelerator program for startups focused on social impact. We were really trying to spark more of these companies to hire people who were left out and really undervalued from the way that we saw it, who just didn't have the same opportunities that I might have had growing up. And eventually in Fresno, I landed a role at an IT services company that had an apprenticeship program, which exposed me to a world I was not familiar with, the world of workforce development and apprenticeship, and really saw the way that we were able to reach people from backgrounds you would not have guessed, right? From people who are working in the fields or people who have been unemployed for long periods of time, or people who had disabilities that kept them from certain job training programs or certain types of jobs. And it really inspired me to see this as a vehicle for creating the change that we were looking to see, of changes that were needed in Fresno, and I'm sure, as I've seen across the country. So at that company, I sort of found my niche in developing partnerships with government agencies focused on workforce development. We're really trying to bring in funding to scale up our programs, but also to bring in candidates from the demographic groups that we wanted to serve, the folks who were really the most marginalized in the community. And then through that work, I heard about an opening at SCAN here at the Southern California Apprenticeship Network for this role as the director while I was in a transition period. And so applied for it, got the role, and just really grateful to be here and to be supporting the great work that so many of our members are up to.
That's great. So, Alex, I'm interested here from that first apprenticeship program that you were exposed to. What did that look like, and how would you say apprenticeships have changed since then?
Yeah, so it was in a IT specifically apprenticeship program, and it started that the company started in 2013, but I think they started their apprenticeship program maybe around 2016, 2017. And it was not a registered apprenticeship program at first. It was just, hey, we see this gap where people that we're training aren't quite ready for full-time work in IT space, especially around software development and other of those types of positions that they were training for. And so the first step was just a paid internship, essentially. And then that program eventually grew and grew to become a full-on registered apprenticeship program that was a one-year program connected to different companies, trying to get them ready for employment in the tech industry, which for a lot of them just completely changed their lives. So it's been interesting to see changes during COVID that allowed for a lot more online and remote to connect people who have access to the internet from all over to these types of training programs and to these types of job opportunities. But it's also been interesting to see the uptick in just the popularity of apprenticeship. Both sides of the political aisle seem to be, at a local, state, and federal level, seem to be interested, at least, if not fully, trying to rally behind apprenticeship as a solution for our economies and for our people, and for people especially who are kind of left out of the economic opportunities that are taking place. So there's been some macro shifts, absolutely, and more industries that you would have never expected, like the entertainment industry or maybe finance industry or IT, that a while back would be relatively unheard of in the apprenticeship space, are now have multiple programs across the country sprouting up. So there's a lot of exciting movement, and I'm hopeful that us as an industry will be able to take the momentum and really take it to where it can be, where apprenticeship can be a viable option, an alternative for people besides college or even in addition to college, to help connect them to meaningful careers.
Yeah, and entertainment is huge out here in Southern California. So LA area. I find it all very interesting. So it's interesting you mentioned that.
Absolutely.
So Alex, getting into more of SCAN, the Southern California Apprenticeship Network, can you give us an insight into what you all do and what drives you?
Yeah, so in our network of apprenticeship networks, we're the 10th in the US, and we're glad to have inspiration from other areas around the country. So SCAN, the Southern California Apprenticeship Network, is an employer-led apprenticeship network in Southern California, bringing together all types of apprenticeship stakeholders to build and expand apprenticeship programs throughout our region. So when we talk about all apprenticeship stakeholders, that looks like many, many different groups. Some including, not an exhaustive list, but could be employers, education and training providers, support service organizations and CBOs, apprenticeship intermediaries, workforce development boards, labor groups, workforce government agencies, foundations and funders, you name it. Any person or organization interested in apprenticeship is welcome to be a part of our network. And what we do is we gather those people to meet each other and then see how they can build complementary partnerships, because apprenticeship, it really takes a village. It takes a lot of different organizations, each playing their own role to run an effective program, from recruitment to pre-apprenticeship or training to the actual employment and job opportunity to continued education. There's so many different components to it. And so we're trying to do that all throughout Southern California, which is a bit ambitious, because we're covering 10 counties across Southern California. So that is from San Luis Obispo, Kern, and San Bernardino County, all the way down to San Diego and Imperial County, which, if anyone wants to add it up, that covers over 23 million people. So it's a sizable region that we're trying to cover here. But yeah, we really think there's a unique opportunity here, because the apprenticeship space feels somewhat disjointed. I kind of jokingly say it's the Wild West. Like, you only know of the people you run into. There's not a lot of central hubs or places to, hey, I want to get engaged in apprenticeship. I'm not really sure where to go. So we're looking to be that place for people to go to eventually for apprentices, but for now, employers and other organizations who want to get involved.
That's great. So you mentioned the Wild West. It's this uncharted territory of apprenticeships. I always like asking this question because so we have a little bit of background on yourself, and we understand what SCAN is now and what your mission is. If we are thinking into the future a little bit, so 5, 10 years down the road, where we're out of this Wild West kind of chaotic apprenticeship idea, and it's fully transformed into all sorts of employers and apprentices within California and across the US. What does that look like for SCAN, and walk us through how you see that in maybe 5 to 10 years down the road?
Yeah, and for anyone who's familiar with the work, you'll know what Drew and I are talking about. But if you're not, if you're trying to get involved in apprenticeship, we say I jokingly say it's the Wild West, because you wouldn't really know where to go to. I remember when I first started working in this field, and I asked someone, hey, how would I get like a roadmap for all of the different resources available to us? And the advice I got from somebody who had been in the field for over 25 years was, go talk to as many people as you can. There was really no central answer or collection point. And so that feels unhelpful if we want to expand this vehicle of apprenticeship to be able to serve as many businesses and addressing their talent needs, and also as many job seekers and their career goals and aspirations. So where I hope we can get to is where in Southern California, we've built out a network of organizations and essentially create a machine or a system. So where everyone plays their own role to support apprenticeship programs. That could be training apprentices, handling logistics, coaching new programs on how to get started. So that any employer or business who comes in and says, hey, we're interested in bringing in more talent through a vehicle like apprenticeship, or any person who says, hey, I'm looking for a new career opportunity, would be able to come to us, and we have clear systems built out, built-in packaging. It just feels like a plug and play model that just feels easy for them. Kind of like they would buy a new iPhone and open it up and have some beautiful packaging, right? And a very, hopefully, somewhat easy way to set it up. Love to create that in the apprenticeship world. And I think that will hopefully serve as a model. And I would love to see dozens more apprenticeship networks throughout the US be able to convene all of the stakeholders from private industry, nonprofit space, education space, government space, et cetera, bringing all the stakeholders together so they can work together in a more cohesive way.
Completely agree. I think what's interesting in the apprenticeship space is that, from internships and other kind of workplace learning programs, we're all an apprentice at one point. And whether you know it or you don't, you've probably been exposed to the apprenticeship model at some point in your life. And I think what's interesting, kind of going from the beginning of our meeting, and we were chatting a little bit before, Alex, is how you mentioned your previous experience being exposed to an apprenticeship in this IT apprenticeship model as well. And I'm curious, as you've kind of been around the apprenticeship space for a little while, are there any success stories from the employer side of things or the apprentice side of things that come to mind? I know at the kickoff event where we met, there were a number of different employers on stage that were talking about their different programs and how they were working towards scaling these programs. And there were 5 or 6 relatively large companies that had large apprenticeship programs, and it was just great to hear from them. Does anything come to mind along those lines?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of examples, fortunately, of success. And so you can look at the employer side of things, you can look at the apprentice side, and you can also look at different organizations who sort of try to build a bridge or bridge the gap between the two in the middle. So on the employer side, even just within our network, your Build Within has done a great job of reaching out to some organizations. So a new organization to the apprenticeship space is planning on having over 100 apprentices this upcoming year, Entertainment Partners, which serves the entertainment industry, which is so exciting to see an organization come to an understanding in a new sense, and just fresh understanding of the model, and say, oh yeah, we're going to adopt this as a large portion of how we develop and acquire talent. And then on the other side of the stage for our kickoff event, you had someone from Northrop Grumman who's had a 40-year long apprenticeship program in a partnership with a local community college, El Camino College, that has routinely brought in dozens and dozens every year of essentially underrepresented talent into Northrop Grumman, into their advanced manufacturing spaces. And then you have, healthcare and IT represented within SCAN as well. Examples like CVS Health and IBM, who use apprenticeship to bring in dozens, if not hundreds, of apprentices across the country into their businesses. And if you're new to the world of apprenticeship, you might think of construction or building worker, but with these two organizations, you're looking at pharmacy techs and software developers as the types of apprentices. So really expanding the view of what's possible for an apprentice occupation, or a route to apprentice in jobs. From the success story side, fortunately, I actually, in my last company, I was friends with a number of the people who I would say are wonderful success stories. There were folks who had various disabilities, who grew up lower income in very situations where they had to work after school, in the fields, even agricultural work, to help their parents pay for food and pay for rent. And they were able to find an opportunity in the IT space through this company's apprenticeship program. Even to folks who had been in prison and had turned their life around and were ready for an opportunity, but felt excluded from so many opportunities because they had to check that box when they were applying for jobs. So, I mean, these are personal friends of mine, and it's amazing to see how their life has completely changed because of the apprenticeship programs and the way that the apprenticeship program connected folks who were maybe working with a government agency or a nonprofit to a training provider. And then the training provider prepared them for a job at an employer where they could continue to grow. So not putting too much of the burden on any one organization or any one person, but just continue to open the door for people. And I think there's a lot of challenges that we face in our communities with a lot of people that don't have the same access to opportunities. And I think apprenticeship is a great vehicle for that. And then in the middle space, bridging the gap, there's a number of organizations who have taken on that training provider role and are doing a great job of recruiting folks, training them, and then getting them plugged into employment opportunities. So that can look like community colleges like El Camino College, who's a part of our network that works with a number of employers in preparing students for jobs there, all the way to, in the tech space, there's a number of apprenticeship intermediaries like Apprenti, Creating Coding Careers, or Smooth Stack that prepare people for jobs in tech, and then in some ways manage the apprenticeship to make it easy for the employer. So there's just a lot of exciting success happening. And one of the roles of SCAN is just going to be sharing these stories, just to say, hey, not only is it possible, but it's happening. And so you should consider how this might benefit your organization or your business.
I love the message. Yeah. +1 to everything you said there, Alex. I think it's so important to hear about the success stories on one end, and then also kind of get in the middle and understand how employers can really start an apprenticeship program and what that could look like. So that's great. So Alex, I think we're kind of wrapping up here. I wanted to pass it over to you in terms of how our listeners can support and get involved in promoting apprenticeships here in California and through SCAN specifically. I think if you spend enough time in Southern California, and I've only been out here a couple times, but you can really see a thriving apprenticeship network and a lot of folks who are really, really engaged and show a lot of promise to push this effort forward. So anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, I'm super grateful for everyone who's so dedicated to this work and then has been really just so many engaged members in our network. So I would say you don't want to miss out. You definitely want to reach out to me. I'm going to try to future-proof this. We're creating a new website and new ways to get involved. But I think the best ways, you can find me on LinkedIn, Alex Hussain, Hussain, or you can find the Southern California Apprenticeship Network on LinkedIn as well. And then this should work, and at least we'll be able to be forwarded where it belongs in the future. But if you can email our team at SCAN, SCAN, at sbwib.org, or you can check out our website at sbwib.org/SCAN.
Great. And I can leave that in the description as well, so folks can have easy access if you're watching on our website or YouTube. Alex, thanks for taking some time out of your day. It was a real pleasure to see you again. I'm out here in LA for a little bit longer, so maybe we can link up. I know you're in San Diego before I head out, but always a pleasure speaking with you. And I'll wrap up by saying this is another episode of the BW View. We'll see you all next time. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Drew.